I'm not getting in the middle of that. I'm neutral. I'm not taking sides. All of this is just code for I have taken a side, and the side I've taken is not yours. Hi, I'm Fronten'a. I'm a stereotypical Gen X wife and mom of five, and becoming my grandmother's full time caregiver, full time sole caregiver, destroyed my extended family. It nearly destroyed my mental health and very nearly destroyed my 13-year marriage. And even with all that I went through, I would do it all again in a heartbeat for her. But if I could do anything differently, I would take into account some of the lessons that I've learned during my caregiving journey. Now, I know I can't go back in time and apply any of these lessons that I've learned, but I can apply them moving forward. And the lesson that I'm working on applying to my life right in this moment is realizing that neutral is not a thing. Neutral is a construct designed to give ourselves permission to do nothing when we see someone we care about being harmed by someone else that we care about. And if you ask me, neutral is weakness. And neutral seems to go hand in hand with being afraid to burn bridges. To be perfectly honest with you, they both bother my spirit to the core. Let me explain. At the beginning of the year, a lot of people tend to make promises to themselves to do better and to be better, to eat healthier foods and to work out more, to drink more water and to date less inappropriate people, and so on and so forth. I used to be one of those people. But I learned years ago that just like starting a new diet on Monday, if I really wanted to do something, I didn't need a Monday or a New Year's ball drop to do it. I would just do it. And in 2024, I just started doing it. 2023 was a living hell for me. I became my grandmother's full-time caregiver, her full-time sole caregiver overnight, and it was a nightmare. Not so much because of her, because I kind of expected caregiving for someone would be hard, but it was a nightmare because I was left to do it alone. I had no help from mine and hers very large family, and I had no help from my grandmother's social network either. She had a very large church social circle because, I mean, let's be honest, that's what most organized religious organizations are. They're just glorified social circles. And not one single person in her very vast social circle did anything to add value to my grandmother's village when she needed them the most. She had me, my 16-year-old son, and my husband as her village, as her entire village. Just us. And to be honest, prior to her moving in with us, she didn't even really care for my husband, but he still stood in to be a part of her village anyway. But anyhow, back to the point. In 2023, I went through the worst season of my life to date. Caregiving nearly destroyed everything I had. It destroyed almost every relationship in my extended family that I shared with my grandmother. My grandmother's children and almost all of her grandchildren, all adults, abandoned her. She even had adult great grandchildren, and they also abandoned her. And watching that also destroyed the part of my heart and spirit that believed that family was all you have. Caregiving destroyed my home. It took the one place in the world that felt safe and peaceful to me and turned it into a nursing home. My home smelled and felt like death all of the time. Not death in the sense of no longer being alive, but death in the sense of no longer having life in it. My grandmother deteriorated right in front of me, and I had to watch it happen 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with no days off. I told my family what I was going through, thinking they would step in and help a little. Then I asked them to step in and help. Then I begged them to step in and help. Then I demanded them to step in and help. And then I forced them to step in and help. And then I lost nearly every person whom I had loved my entire life. And then at the end of 2023, I lost her. My grandmother passed away in December of 2023. I laid her to rest in January of 2024, and then I began the healing. I spent all of 2024 recovering. Not only was caregiving hard for the obvious reasons, but caregiving was hard because caring for a parent or grandparent can open childhood wounds, and caregiving for my grandmother did just that. Emotions that I hadn't felt since childhood were suddenly slapping me upside my head day in and day out. My grandmother was a difficult person when she was in the best of health, but as she aged, that sentiment was amplified by 1 million. And then as she slipped further into dementia, that difficult part of her became unbearable. Now, I say all this to say, I had to heal adolescent me for the second time. And that is what I spent all of 2024 doing. I went into the deepest hibernation that I have ever been in. See, hibernation or self-isolation is something that I've always done. But the 2024 hibernation was different. Normally, my hibernations are filled with sadness, but this hibernation was filled with rage and hate. I hated my family for abandoning us. I hated my grandmother's church social circle for abandoning her. I hated my mother for abandoning her mother. And I hated my mother even more for abandoning me. I hated that so-called church people showed their ass and deepened my church hurt to the point of replacing it with church hate. I hated that my son had to have a front row seat to watching his favorite person die right in front of him. I hated that my grandmother favored her eldest daughter, and then her eldest daughter abandoned her when she needed her more than ever. I just hate it. And I hated that I had to lose all respect for people that I respected the most because they watched all of this happen to us and they did nothing to step in and help us, even though they claimed to love us. Now, thankfully, I am on the other side of that hate. I wouldn't say I'm back to love. Unfortunately, I don't think I will ever be back there for some of those relationships ever again, but I am back to peace. And what's more, I am back stronger than ever. I did some of the hardest work internally and externally than I have ever had to do to date. Some of that work included and is including removing anything and anyone who has shown me who they truly are. I stood up for myself even when people were trying to paint me as the lowest life form for taking in my beloved grandmother who needed me and who needed them. I had people who I loved try to break me when life was already doing a damn fine job of that because I kept standing up for myself and because I wouldn't stop using my voice to be my grandmother's voice. And even during the darkest attacks, I still stood up for myself and fought back. I fought my ass off, and I was introduced to the strength in me that I didn't even know I had. 2023 and 2024 were the most transformative seasons of my life thus far. But 2025 has reminded me that the work is not yet done. I didn't do the whole new year, new me bullshit, but it is a new year and it is a new me. And I am now on the job of removing the neutral from my life. I want you to know that there is no such thing as neutral. Neutral is just a fancy word for fear. Fear of upsetting the other party, even when the other party is wrong. Fear of damaging the relationship with the other party. Fear of being seen unfavorably. Fear of what doing something to stand up for me is going to do for them. What kind of repercussions is it going to bring on them? Blah, blah, blah. If you stand around doing nothing while someone is being harmed and your reasoning is, oh, I don't want to get in the middle, so you do nothing, that's called complicity. You have now become an accomplice to the harming of that person. You are not neutral. You are an accomplice. Neutral allowed people who claim to love me watch someone attack me right in front of them, and they did not one single thing about it. They did nothing while watching me come undone because they didn't want to pick a side because, neutral doesn't pick a side. But that's a lie. Neutral does pick a side. Neutral is just too afraid to say which side it's picked. Neutral is a mask for something much bigger. See, when someone tells you that they don't want to pick a side, please know that that's because they've already picked a side, and that side is not yours. And for me to have done the most loving thing I have ever done for anyone, to be repaid for that sacrifice by other people that I love attacking me, for asking for help, while at the same time, other people that I also love stood by and watched people that they knew I loved do it. And they did absolutely nothing because they were neutral. What do you think that did to my mental well being? What do you think that did to my spirit? If you are a neutral person, let me ask you something. You walk up on a group fighting and you notice it's 10 against 1. You realize you know and love every single person in this fight. And you see that one person is fighting by themselves and they are fighting for their life. Would you just stand there and let it happen because you don't want to get in the middle? At the very least, you'd break it up. At the very most, you'd defend them. But do nothing wouldn't be the action or the non-action. Y'all have to know neutral doesn't exist in the context of relationship. Neutral is what you're being told because the truth is too hard to admit. Yeah, I see what's happening to you, and yeah, I see you taking a beating, and yeah, I know they are wrong, but I'm either too afraid to do anything to stop it because of what might happen to me, or I'm actually choosing a side, and the side I have chosen is not yours. See, that's the real truth behind neutral. And neither of those options should be acceptable to you. We teach people how to treat us. And if you allow people to not get in the middle of seeing someone, anyone, harm you, you are teaching them that you are not worth the trouble of fighting for. And if you have taught people that lesson and you have allowed those people to have continued access to you, then you are choosing to not get in the middle of standing up for you. And now you are not getting in the middle of fighting for you. And if no one else is standing up and fighting for you, and you are not standing up and fighting for you, then who is? It's really hard to get over people that you love harming you. Sure, I know. Betrayal and heartbreak always feel the worst when it's coming from someone that you love. It's designed that way. But as hard as it is to get over, let me tell you something. We never truly get over the hurt we cause ourselves when it is us doing the harming to us. No more neutral. No more allowing people to be too fearful to do right by you. And it's up to only you to enforce that. Set that boundary right now and remove anyone on the very first offense who is not willing to get in the middle of anything and anyone they know is doing you harm. Do you hear me? No more neutral. Fronten'a, do you hear me? No more neutral. And one more thing. Can we normalize burning bridges? I mean, burning bridges down to the ground. But again, hear me out. For the longest of times, we have been told that the right thing to do when someone has wronged us is to forgive, that it's always best to be the bigger person, that true forgiveness comes with moving on and forgiving and forgetting, that the conflict, no matter how big or small, is not worth losing someone over, especially if that someone is family. That we have to let go of anything that's been done to us if it's our family, because it's family. That if you don't get over it, it means that you're bitter. And I say this is all bullshit. All of it is bullshit. I am now of the belief that these are just different forms of manipulation and gaslighting. We've been manipulated into not holding people accountable because it keeps the peace. It keeps everything moving smoother when no one kicks up friction and stirs shit up. But sometimes we need to cause friction so that things can be smoother moving forward. Sweeping things under the rug allows for everyone to continue just to get along and continues to facilitate everybody having these family gatherings at the holidays and weddings, funerals, baby showers, and such. It makes it easier for the people who may not directly be involved in the conflict to remain in relationship with both parties who are involved. Because if they can convince the person who has been harmed to just get over it, then there's no need for there to be any further conflict. Even if the person who was harmed is still being harmed, if the person not involved in the conflict can just get everyone else just to get over it, especially the person who's been harmed, then no bridges have to be burned. So no harm, no foul. But again, this is bullshit. What this really does is allow bad people to stay bad and kind people to remain walked over and harmed. It keeps the abuser abusing and the victim being victimized. Telling someone to just get over something to keep the peace is weakness. Not weakness on the part of the person being harmed, but weakness on the part of the person that's making that request. Telling someone to endure something because it's easier for you is weakness. What we should be doing is encouraging people to stand up for themselves and to fight for themselves. And the action that we should be taking from the outside looking in is to stand up for others when we see someone being harmed and being mishandled. We should be addressing the ones doing the harm and then holding them accountable. We should be making sure that the person being harmed is being heard and is being seen, and we should be helping them work towards getting made whole again. We should never be telling someone to endure. What we should be telling them is to burn that fucking bridge down. Burn that shit smooth down to the ground. The message should be that someone harming you should never be allowed to have continued access to you. And trying to maintain that bridge is just more work for you, and it's completely unnecessary. You can encourage someone to forgive, but the focus of that forgiveness should be about healing for themselves. Forgiveness is not about the person who's mishandled us anyway, and it's certainly not about giving them continued access. It's about releasing the harm that they have placed on the person that they've hurt. Yes, forgive, and then burn that bridge down. You are not being the bigger person by standing up for yourself. You are for sure not being the bigger person for fighting for yourself. And you're not being bitter or holding on to a grudge by doing whatever is necessary to protect yourself. And anyone telling you this is gaslighting you. This is gaslighting. It is a manipulation and it is dangerous. Not only should you burn down the bridge to the person who was harming you initially, but you should also consider burning down the bridge with the person who was gaslighting you into thinking that endurance is what is best for you instead of boundaries. Fuck them too. Burn it down. I promise you, peace can be found in any place that boundaries exist. And burning down a bridge where on the other side of that bridge is harm and hurt is a damn fine boundary to set. Burn it down. Sometimes we feel like we need someone to tell us it's okay to burn that bridge. Well, if that's you and you need someone to tell you that, then you have it. You have the permission to burn that bridge down. Burn that motherfucker down to the ground and then walk peacefully into your future without all of that. It's really good for you. Be mindful of how you allow others to handle you, and forgive yourself for how you've handled you. Please consider becoming a part of my village. I think you'll like it here. Until next time.